let's talk about life in Manchester then.
Sure.
So you've lived in Denver, you've lived in Lubbock, and you've talked a little bit about that. You've lived in Houston. I've lived in Houston too. Basically a swamp. In terms of the heat is what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yep.
not in terms of like the people. I love the people. I love the food. Some of the best food in the
Just to
country is
clarify.
definitely in Houston. Um, what's your favorite Mexican place in Houston, by the way?
Oh my gosh. There is a oh my gosh, what is it called? Oh, I'm
Where
gonna
is it? I might be able to tell
botch
you
the
what.
name. It's near Katy. It's in like shoot.
Is
Like
it where they?
just before Katy.
Also, it's
Uh still something with an S.
is it the place where they play the old movies?
No.
Like, no, okay.
My friend, the family that I'm really close with in Houston, we always joke that it's called Sheila's, but because that's my mom's name, but
Okay,
it's not Sheila's.
okay,
Anyways, they do incredible enchiladas,
okay.
like the greatest. And I'm gonna ask them what it's called, and I'm gonna let you know. But that place, whatever it is, they do the best enchiladas. What about you?
Is it on 610? Is it like you're saying like is it on the inner beltway or is it on 8?
Yeah, no, it's on.
It's on 610.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Um,
I could be wrong.
mine. Well, so the first place that my then girlfriend, now wife, took me to in Houston was some random hole in the wall that I can't remember now.
Those are the best ones.
I know it was amazing, but I don't think we found it again after that. And then uh, I'm a Papacitos has the best fajitas,
Pappasitos
um,
is good.
but I'm a sucker for Chewy's creamy jalapeno dip, um,
Yep.
and
Queso.
yeah, and so I actually made that the other day, and you can actually make it pretty easily. So I'm yeah, I'm a sucker for that. But that's that one thing I really do miss about Houston is the food.
Great choice. Great
So
choice.
so
Yes, I
then you live
agree.
in New Jersey, slash, or were you living in New York and just commuting to New
No, I
Jersey?
was in New Jersey.
Okay, and now Manchester, um, and Manchester is certainly a lot smaller in sprawl than most of those other places.
Yep.
How does Manchester compare to those places for you? What do you like about it, other than obviously not the weather, and how does it unfavorably compare, other than the weather?
um, hmm, it's a good question. I
It's difficult
actually,
because you've been in lockdown, so
yeah, yeah. Thankfully, I've been able to explore the city for the last 2 years before the lockdown happened. Um, I think it's a really fun city. There always seems to be something going on, something happening. I've absolutely loved experiencing game days in Manchester, and you just walk around and everywhere you look, it's someone wearing a scarf or a hat or a kit of the teams that are playing, and it's cool to have obviously both United and City amongst the life in Manchester.
hmm
Obviously, we prefer to see blue rather than red, but I think that goes without saying.
yeah,
And so game days not in COVID are really fun. But yeah, I live city center, so obviously there's always people around, and I've really enjoyed that piece of it. And I honestly have just really enjoyed getting to know a different culture. It's
hmm
had its challenges for sure. But yeah, it's been really cool to experience that. And then obviously in the last probably year, I've ventured out and made some friends outside of the club and outside of my team, which has been really cool and made it feel a lot more like home.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite place to eat in Manchester?
Oh my gosh, it's such a hard question. That's the other thing. Normally, like when I feel like when people think of England, obviously, like the food is not their first thought. But
Yeah.
Manchester's such a diverse place. There's so many good places to eat. I definitely missed out on eating Indian food for the majority of my life because I only really started eating it when I moved to England. And by that time, I was 24. So I missed out on a long time, but definitely love a good curry.
hmm
There's some really cool places around where I live. There's a really good Spanish tapas restaurant. Yeah, some just like some cool bars and lots of really good coffee, which is definitely my thing.
And that's only a very recent thing. It feels like in Manchester that they've gotten good at coffee. So I think you've kind of come gone there at a good time. Yeah, you're right about England and food though. People just think like fish and chips, full English breakfast, maybe like
Like
roast beef,
potatoes.
very dry, very
Yeah.
bland food. Um, and we're definitely made better by the various and sundry cultures that have kind of come to the UK and introduced their cuisines to us. Because otherwise, yeah, I'd just be so sick of potatoes.
Yes, it's
Um,
definitely a good food city.
so, do you drive in the UK then?
I do, yes.
How are you finding that?
I don't think it's really that hard. The only thing was when I first started driving was getting my depth perception sorted out with having so much of the car on my left.
Hmm.
So the only issue I had was that the nearsighted turns, I would hit the curb sometimes.
Hmm.
But other than that, it's been pretty smooth sailing. It's a bit odd when I come back home for like the holidays or something and I drive for a couple weeks in the States and then the immediate back on the other side of the road is a little bit weird, but I tend to readjust quite quickly.
Yeah, and do you drive stick or are you an auto?
Absolutely not. I have no idea how to drive manual, so it's automatic for me.
That's all right. My wife is exactly the same, and so it's a yeah. I think she would have really struggled trying to figure out the whole depth perception thing you mentioned, plus
Yeah,
learning how to drive stick. So she just stuck with automatic, and
I got the
it's
hang of it though. We're good.
yeah, it's good. Um, have you? So you mentioned about venturing out, kind of socially. Have you kind of been anywhere else in the UK other than kind of the immediate Manchester area?
I've spent some time in London. I have some friends and teammates that play down there. So obviously in non-COVID times, I've gone down a few times and visited there and explored a little bit, but not nearly as much as I want to. I've also explored some of the countryside,
Oh,
which is so amazing. And something I love a lot about Manchester is you can drive for 20 minutes and be completely out of the city center,
mhm.
and into some really nice walks and stuff like that. So I'm a National Trust member. Woohoo!
Lovely.
So I get access, obviously, to all the really nice parks and walks and things like that. So I really enjoy that.
Spent a lot of time at Lime Park then.
Yes, Lime Park, Alderley Edge is a good one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just nice to get out, get away.
Hmm. Um, so what is the first thing or the first place that you want to visit once lockdown is lifted? Which the Prime Minister, I don't know if you've seen, the Prime Minister today has said that they hope to have it like completely lifted by the summer.
Oh, fingers crossed. I will
Yeah.
be counting down the days. Oh gosh, I I just want to go out for food with friends.
Hmm.
Sit outside somewhere, have good food, be able to talk to people outside my household. I
Yeah.
feel like my expect like I really don't expect a lot. I just want to eat out and have good conversation.
I think the only positive or one of the only positive things that is going to kind of come out of all this is that people are going to appreciate that community
Oh my
and
gosh,
sense of
absolutely.
conversation and food and all that stuff a lot more than they did beforehand in terms of taking it for granted. Um,
100%, yeah.
so I'm so excited to kind of get back into that as well. What's the weirdest English food that you've been subjected to, shall we say?
Oh gosh. Weirdest. Trying
Have
to
you
think of
tried
things that I'm like not a fan of.
Marmite? Have you tried that?
Don't like Marmite.
Hmm.
Not a fan of that. Haven't really given it a chance, but I've tasted it and thought, probably not for me.
That's fair.
Um, okay, can I talk about things that I really like? Because that's
Yeah,
easier.
absolutely.
Okay. Also, super disappointed that for so long in my life, I was not introduced to sticky toffee pudding because it might be one of the greatest things I've ever tasted in my life. So good. If you're listening to this and you have not had sticky toffee pudding, you need to change that ASAP.
Hmm.
Also, confusing. We had this debate the other night because
Hmm.
obviously Abby Dahlcamper is new to
Hmm.
England. We
Yes.
were on an away trip. We got lucky enough to have some apple crumble with custard. And all right, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, here we go.
If you had to describe custard to someone who had never had it, doesn't know what it is, how would you describe it?
Um, I would describe it. Who's never had custard, by the way? But
I hadn't before I moved to the UK.
okay, well, it's it's kind of like like a I guess a sweet soup in some ways.
You
It's like
used the word soup. This was the debate. Is it a sauce?
a
Please say yes.
no. It's kind of more. Well, yes, I guess it
It's like
is.
a dessert sauce.
It is like I guess it is like a dessert sauce.
Yes.
But
Claps for you, because that
it
was
just
my opinion.
yeah, I guess so. But like, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like try and describe custard. Custard is custard. You just
Okay,
it's
well, if you ordered custard in the States, you would get like really, really, really thick ice cream.
mm,
So
that's
custard
true.
isn't a thing in the States. So, anyways, custard, I've learned to like more than I did at first because I'm like, if you're gonna have custard, you might as well just have ice cream.
Hmm.
But it's grown on me,
Hmm.
so that's a positive. Um, so
What
yeah, that
sticky toffee
those two
pudding?
things
Hmm.
I've really enjoyed and will
Hmm.
continue to enjoy.
Have you made your own sticky toffee pudding yet?
No, I'm nervous that I'll ruin it for myself.
Okay. Do you want a recipe? I can send you a recipe.
Yes,
Like a really good.
100%.
Okay, I'll send you the recipe.
Thank
Just
you.
with the sauce, just like ignore the amount of sugar and butter. Like, just don't think about it. Just do it.
Okay, okay, okay.
Um, like, yeah, don't want to ruin it for you, but like, I know that being an athlete, you have to. No, no, no. Uh,
Treat yourself.
yeah, exactly, exactly. If you can't treat yourself now, when can you?
Exactly.
So let's pivot a little bit. There are a lot of interviews online where you talk about your faith.
Mhm.
What many people might not know about me is I'm married to a pastor. Um,
Amazing.
I have a Master of Divinity degree. I don't like that sounds so fancy. It's like I haven't
Does sound
really
fancy.
mastered divinity. Um, I'm not really doing much with it right now, but faith has been a big part of my life. And from the interviews that you've given, certainly seems very true about you um, as well. My first question is: do you actually enjoy being asked about it? Because I guess it's something that once it's out, a lot of people kind of want you to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I love being asked about it. It's something that I would absolutely prefer to be asked about than just like actively talk about.
Hmm.
So 100% I like being asked about it.
Cool.
I have gotten a lot of like comments on my social media and on my YouTube and podcasts like can you share more about it? And it's obviously difficult because it's difficult to just like talk about it myself with like no context or anything. So yeah, I definitely enjoy speaking about it when I'm asked.
That's a good way of putting it. Like being, yeah, answering questions about it rather than speaking to it. I think that's a really good way of saying it. I mean, I have a Master of Divinity, and I don't especially like talking about it. I also enjoy answering people's questions, but yeah,
Yeah, it's easier than just
kind of
someone saying like talk about your faith and I'm like, "Well, what do you want to know?"
can get a little soapboxy or
Yeah,
feel a little soapboxy at times as well.
definitely.
Um, One of the things that I've realized during this whole lockdown kind of phase and time is the number of people in the city community and footballing fans in general who didn't realize how much they would miss going to football games
Mhm.
and what it means to them on a kind of a spiritual level. And as someone who grew up attending church and also going to city games, I recognized a lot of similarities between the two. You have you mentioned earlier about seeing people in scarves on game days and things like that. People have their game day rituals. They'll go to Mary D's and have a pint before they go to the match, or they'll park in a certain place, or they'll wear a certain shirt that everything is very, very ritualized, very much like religion. There's liturgical singing. Everyone knows the words to the songs. But most of all, there is this deep sense of community that I think a lot of people are really missing. People that they may not even know their names, and this is the funny thing is that you sit with people as a season ticket holder, you sit with people for seasons upon seasons upon seasons. You have no idea what their name is, but you
Mhm.
know more about them than you know about some members of your own family. Um, do you see any kind of comparison on the playing side of things to in terms of that community or kind of anywhere where your faith has kind of helped or been a part of your playing life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would completely agree with everything that you've said around that. And I think it's so special. I think that's why sports are so special, because it's different than anything else in the world in terms of how it brings people together and having a common, like, deep, deep passion. And I've really felt that being a city player and just being part of the city community and the club. But from like a faith perspective, from my own, I think the last 3 years of being in England and being challenged at a new level, in this team, my faith has been more important to me than ever before. And
Mhm.
I think what's so important for people to realize, and what I've experienced with faith, is it's not a fixed thing. It's always evolving and changing. And I think I had this misconception as a younger person that there was just going to be this moment where I was like, you know what? This is going to happen. And I'm going to have this like light bulb moment, this aha moment where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so filled with faith. I'm so on fire for the Lord. Like, this is just gonna, and then it's just gonna stay that way. Whereas for me, it's actually been the complete opposite of that. There will be moments where I feel that way, and moments where I feel really far away in my faith and not super faithful, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I think that that's just the beauty of what faith is that no matter what happens, similarly to someone being such a on fire supporter of City is, there's that foundation and that almost loyalty that no matter which way things sway, you always come back to that passion and that foundation. And for me, that foundation has been more important
Mm.
continuously as I go through this career. And for me being at City, I've struggled. It's been hard. Like, it's this lifestyle is something that I'm so grateful for. And the fact that I get to be on the pitch and kick a ball around and call it my job is something that I hope that I never lose sight of, the privilege that I have with that. But at the same time, it's really hard being in a position where the expectation to perform is always there. To be at your best is always there, to perform at a high level despite what's happening off the pitch.
Mm.
And so for me, it's just been something to always come back to. And this is the one thing for me that's always going to be the same, in terms of, my faith's not ever going anywhere. And so in a world that's constantly changing, out off the pitch more now than ever before, and on in my job, from one week to the next, things can look completely different.
Mm.
And you're in form, you fall out of form, you're in the team, you're out of the team, you're in the squad, you're out of the squad. Like, to be able to have something as a foundation, as a firm foundation that always brings you back to, where you come from, what you're about, what your values are, who you are as a person, will always be the reason why I can stay consistent in who I am,
Mm.
despite, everything that goes on. And to end a long another long answer, uh, it definitely doesn't come without challenge,
Sure.
of, being challenged on who you are and, your values and your morals. And for me, that's so much more important than how I end my career on the pitch.
Mm. You mentioned the kind of undulating nature of faith and feeling more faithful, less faithful, closer, further away. And how kind of external factors both affect your faith, but also you recognize what your faith is because of the external factors that are kind of affecting it. Has playing football on a different continent or and living on a different continent from where you kind of grew up. I know you kind of went to a Christian high school, and uh, the, there are the kind of parts of the US that are kind of very very culturally Christian, and that is the UK is definitely a post Christian
Mhm.
country.
Mhm.
Has that changed your lens of how you view your faith? and how so, if that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to not get like overly philosophical, but I think it's really important to come back to the definition of faith and what it actually means. And for me, the simplest way to put it is just believing in something that you can't see.
Hmm.
And so for me, that's the essence of the ebbs and flows of life is, well, okay, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing. But there's this other thing that I can't see that I know is there and that I know will always be there.
Hmm.
And so moving to the UK, into another culture, into a, quite honestly, much more brutal and cutthroat culture, naturally, which has taken me a long time to learn. It's actually allowed me to be to have more grace with myself.
Mm.
And I think, again, to not get too like biblical or philosophical, there was not a lot of times when Jesus was on earth that he was living in a comfortable space.
Hmm.
Like, the man was in the desert for a significant amount of time. Like, this was a man who constantly put himself in uncomfortable situations, and every single time stayed true to who he was and what his mission was, on earth. And I think, as a Christian, I see my responsibility as, you know, can I look as much like Jesus as possible on a day-to-day basis? And I think for me, I used to feel a lot of like pressure in that, and like have to be good all the time. Like, mistakes, yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but like, make sure that you're like hard on yourself about them, and that you like show people that you're going to do better, and almost be like this like people pleaser. And for me, that like really blew up in my face when I moved to the UK, because a lot of people don't understand why I am a Christian, like what
Hmm.
that means and why is it important. And it's really challenged me on a moral and values level. Like, how much can I go through that really pushes me to the limits of my values and still, you know, be who I want to be and live up to the expectation that I have for myself. And most of the time I find myself falling really short of that. And what I've learned being in a different culture is that I have to constantly put myself in these uncomfortable situations in order to grow as a
Hmm.
person, in my faith, as a footballer, as a friend, as a family member, all of the labels that I have as a human. Obviously, Christian is one of the biggest ones for me. And so, in a culture who doesn't understand, for the most part, I have some really, really great people in my life that share faith with me, and have been so pivotal in this move for me. But I've lost my train of thought. For the majority of people that I'm around on a day-to-day basis, that at first were very skeptical of the way that I am, it's been a process to continue to be that person in the face of a lot of people who it just seems like really weird and strange too. And that's been really hard for me. But I think what's been so cool to see is those people in my life really gain a level of respect for me to stick with who I am in the midst of some things that I've gone through, or being in another culture where those values aren't shared on the same level.
Hmm.
And so that's been a huge test for me. And I think when I talk about giving myself a little bit more grace, it's like, it's just really silly to think that we are going to walk through this life and not fail miserably all the time.
Hmm.
And so that's coming from someone who literally makes a living on performing at a high level. Like, that's so for me, that's been such a massive, massive thing for me to kind of like get on that level.
Hmm.
And I've had this conversation with really good friends of mine in the footballing world, is we have this sense of chasing perfection and thinking for some crazy reason that perfection is attainable. And then when we realize that we're human and we can't get there, it's like this big disappointment.
Hmm.
And so I think it's trying to live on that level of chasing perfectionism, chasing perfecting our craft. And that's obviously being an athlete and being a footballer, but then intertwining that faith and values foundation that allows us to cushion the failure and the fallbacks with that deep, deep sense of who we are. Knowing that, like I said, at the end of my career, I don't really care if people remember me as a footballer. I just want them to remember me for how I impacted them as a human,
Sure.
and what their experience was with me, on a deeper level than just being my teammate.
Yeah, it's a really good answer. One of the things that you mentioned was, Jesus spending a lot of time in the desert, and how one of the things that he was homeless. Didn't own a house or anything like that. Basically all he'd done by the time he was 30 was like build a few chairs. He was a carpenter, and that's what he did. Uh, but when he was out there in the wilderness, when he was kind of traveling all around Israel, he was in Samaria and Palestine and Judea, all these places. Uh, he would always interact with those people that he met on the way, and learn. He would learn something from that. He would, I think about the Roman, and the faith that he had that Jesus could heal his daughter from miles away, and things like that. And so, that sense of like being in an uncomfortable place, but also that being like a place where we potentially learn the most about who we are, ourselves, because it's really easy to be who we want to be in a very comfortable place. It's only when our values are tested that we actually know if they're values that we want to hold on
Mm-hmm.
to, I guess, as well. And that kind of leads me into a question about Voice Now, and Black Lives Matter. Last year, in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, um, you posted some things on your Instagram, and since then you've been involved with Zach Steffen's foundation, Voice Now, which fights for injustice and equality for the Black community. Um, how did that kind of come about, and what led you to become involved in that?
Yeah, so obviously I wanted to I wanted to be involved in some realm. And I think I'll get to obviously like how I've connected with Zach, but I think as athletes, and this is so much of, what they want to do at Voice Now, is we have this incredible platform as athletes, to make a change in the world, whether that's, something big or something small, or posting an Instagram post. And I felt a little bit actually really torn posting on my Instagram in the wake of George Floyd, because I was like, who am I to almost to have an opinion about this when it's not my experience? And I'm privileged and I'm blessed, and I've been really grateful to have the things that I've had in my life, and I haven't had to have the experience that so many of my Black friends and Black people that I've never known have to deal with. And I just felt so enraged and so angry, and I didn't know what to do with that anger. And it's still there. I think it's like everyone who talks about this, um, the Black Lives Matter movement, it's not something that was just in 2020. It's not something that was not some isolated incident. And I think, um, when I learned about Voice Now and when I met Zach, that was something that really sat with me. And I thought, here's someone, him and his partner in the foundation, obviously, here's people who are really trying to make a lasting change. And so when I had the opportunity, absolutely 100%, I wanted to jump on it. And I didn't know Zach before he came to City. But we got connected through a mutual friend of ours, and have become really good friends, which has been really cool outside of Voice Now and everything as well. But he's been really open in sharing their hopes and dreams for his foundation, and he's really really passionate about it, which is fantastic. So yeah, we got to do some photos together, which was really cool, to help him. I think at the time it was because they were launching the merchandise,
Hmm.
and I just thought if I could help in any realm, then I definitely wanted to. But it's Voice Now is just a 100% encompasses all of the passion that like I feel as an athlete behind Black Lives Matter and helping the community. And Zach has a really big heart for the community and experiences that he's had and that friends of his have had. And for me, that was how can we amplify the voices of underprivileged youth. And obviously, they partner with the Boys and Girls Club of America, which is fantastic. So any way that I can help, like I said, amplify those voices and amplify the voice of Voice Now, I want to do. And I think the work that they're doing is fantastic. And I've been able, because we're such good friends, to see the work that he puts in behind the scenes, and it's a lot. So they're doing really great things for the community, and hopefully he can continue to build that foundation of athletes that can use their voices to grow the foundation and in turn help so many more communities get what they need. They just did that awesome 10K, raised a lot of money for the Boys and Girls Club of America. So they're doing really good work, and I'm just really grateful to have been introduced to Zach and been able to be a really small part of Voice Now.
If you want to find out more about what Voice Now does, you can go to their website, which is voice now foundation.org. You mentioned advocacy, and you talked a lot today about your passion for equality of the women's game with the men's game in football. And so my final question is, what is one thing that differs between the women's game and the men's game that you feel that the women's game can teach the men's game?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I kind of...
No, that's like a really important question. I just want to have the best answer I can think of. I thought that the question was going in a different direction, so I had already thought of my answer. That we can teach the men's game. That it's so important to connect with your fan base and have like an appreciation for them. And I think that's not really fair to the men's game to say like have an appreciation, because I'm sure that they do. But I was speaking on another podcast about this actually. I feel like one of the big differences between the men's game and the women's game is accessibility to players. And just because of our difference in like fame levels, obviously like Premier League players and WSL players very much vary in their fame, which is natural in a lot of respects. But I think that women's footballers are just so much easier to have access to from a connection standpoint, social media standpoint, things like that. And I think that it's just so important for the women's game that we really keep that community really tight knit. And I think that the men's game could really benefit from that too. I feel like women's football fans get to see us on more of a personal level. And sometimes, that's not the best thing. And other times I think it can be really beneficial. But if the men's game just opened the door a little bit more to that, I think that would be really cool for fans to see, and may open another side to the game of people seeing that they're just human beings as well. And I think that they could really benefit from that.
Yeah, and potentially have a bit more grace for men's professional football.
Yeah, for sure.
Grace is a wonderful note to end this interview on. Janine Beckie, thank you so much for talking with me today. Where can we find you on social media?
I am on everything. You can find me at Janine Beckie on Twitter. It's either Janine Beckie or Janine Beckie 4. I can't remember. I recently changed it. Same on Instagram. And then I have a podcast. It's called Brewing with Beckie, where I speak to, so far, mostly teammates, but hoping to vary that up. And I'm on YouTube as well. So we just YouTube my name. Follow me. Check it out.
The Janine Beckie media empire rolls on. When you're done with football, you're just going to kind of move straight into broadcasting. It's going to be absolutely seamless.
We'll see.
Is that something you like to do? I'm just kind of carrying
definitely
on
in some realm. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening or watching, because there's also going to be on our YouTube channel. We will see you again next time. Thanks.